people have a hard time to understand this because in our modern day, everybody likes to act like they're independent and free, which is not really how it works. And we are here, we are where we are because of our family members who came from before. And they had to struggle and they did what they had to do to survive, and over, I don't know, imagine how many thousands of years so that you're here. And every system of compensation that allows one generation to survive gets established in the nervous system and either gets strengthened or pushed out, something else comes in. But eventually you have, over thousands of years, something that's very forged and very sharp and very specific. And let's say you get, because it's like it becomes sharp, 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 sharp. That means the skill set, the compensation. Skill set doesn't always mean you're rich. Skill set means you're able to survive, and survive has nothing to do with richness. You can there's different strategies to survive. Richness is a variable amongst others. So you get to the tip of the precision, and eventually something new wants to be born, so that we start something else. But you can't just go there. You owe. You owe them. And if you don't pay them, they don't let you go. Because you got to give them something. In a way, you have to take them with you. In a way, we can say you have to take them with you. Although they will not necessarily come, but that's by you taking everything they've done, all their successes and failures, and integrating it and becoming a new man, you're taking them with them. That means if you go to the other world, they get reward. They have no reason to want to hold you back. However, you're not allowed to go to the other side. You're not allowed to change unless there's a payment that's done. And now we're not talking about a payment. You don't have capital to pay. We're not talking about finance or energetic capital. A payment of recognition, a payment of respect, a payment of appreciation, a payment of understanding. And that process is a deeper spiritual kind of payment before we speak about shifting, literally living circumstances. You have to pay them. How many people actually care about this? Everybody's selfish, man. You're on your own. And when you look at generally the past, if you look at your father, your grandfather, a couple of generations back, if you know of it, generally either you'll be overexcited about it, but most of the time you're critical. My father's a this or that. My mother's a this or that, right? And then there's, of course, a version that is just like hyper-romanticized, exaggerated, that has nothing to do with reality, right? So you don't have an actual sense of these people, who they were, what they gave you, what they had to go through. And you are the outcome of this. So they live inside of you, that's literal. So if you block all of that off, you don't have access to them, that you don't have access to the strength that they have. And the strength that they have may not be what you wished you had. Huh? It's what it is. You don't have access to the strength that they have, so they will not give you their strength, in other words. And you are plagued by their so-called weaknesses. They're affecting you anyways. All of that because there's a closure to the reality, a closure to biological reality, a closure that your life is not really your own. It seems like it, but not really. I owe my life to the one that came before me, and that person owes their life to the one that came before them. That's the truth. And it creates an unbroken line, which is what a lineage has always been about. And lineages are always there, except that the common man is a moron, is an imbecile, has no sense of it. Or they worship ancestors in their fantasies, which has got nothing to do. No, an ancestor is biological. It's in your body. It's body meaning AKA the mind also. It's one and the same. This is real. You can make it into like, what's the movie with the Black Panther, and you go into the realm of the ancestors, and but this is like a mental realm. Fine, but that mental possibility has its physiological expression. It's real. Now, how do I access this? First of all, it's your birthright, so it's not like you need, it's special. There's nothing special about it, but it's locked, it's closed. Certain powers are closed. In order to access them, you need to pay something. You say pay respect. That's why we say pay respect to the ancestors. And that respect has to grow, right? If you owe a lot of respect, so that means you have to pay a lot of respect. But if you don't have a lot of respect, how the hell are you going to pay the respect? Let's say you need to pay, let's say to have access to that power. Let's say you owe 10 million respect. Right? But you have like barely 5. How are you going to afford that? You can't afford this. You can't pay respect. That means you don't have access to it. So once upon a time, this still exists somehow. You go see some kind of shaman, and the shaman could give you rituals or some kind of mantras or tricks to heighten the payment process. So I'm going to give you this. If you repeat that mantra X number of times, you're going to go from, you have five payments of respect now, we can grow it to 10,000. And if you do this specific ritual, or if you do this specific form of penance, we'll go from 10,000 to 100,000. That'll pay respect. There's other ways much simpler to do that, but that requires depth, right? You got to pay respect to have access to this. But who pays respect nowadays, right? Nobody pays respect. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about powers. Yeah, but those powers are yours, and if you don't have access to them, you're going to remain this insignificant individual. But here's the catch. If you have access to that power, you're responsible. And nobody wants to be responsible. We've covered this multiple times on this channel. No person, man or woman, wants to be responsible nowadays. You want to be on an island on your own, and you want to have no responsibility, no connection. You want to be, quote unquote, free, which you're not, and you're going to be plugged into a machine like a bitch that you fucking are. So to have access to that power means you pay respect. To have access to that power means you have a duty. You're duty bound. You're a duty towards your ancestors, your forefathers, which means there's a game being played. You're not free to do whatever the hell you want or whatever you want to be. That's nonsense. This is more lies and more lies and more lies so that you buy shit that keeps you exactly where you are, useless and dumb. So anyways, there's a lot that we can say about the subject of ancestors, but one thing is for sure, your life is not your own, you owe. And people don't like that. You owe the city, you owe the government, you owe, this is surface shit, but let's remove the context, the social context. You owe your ancestors. How do you pay them? Well, number one, you got to pay them with respect, but you don't know what it means to have respect. How could you respect something if you don't understand it? How could you respect something if you don't know it? If you don't recognize it yourself? It's impossible. You can do it with your mind, you can pretend. No, you don't know. How are you going to know what they went through? Well, you can only figure that out if you journey within yourself and you discover the story of your lineage. It's right there. It's encrypted inside of your body. I say body like this is body-mind, right? It's literally encrypted. It's there. It's in the code. And then once you start to know the story of your ancestors, because ain't nobody fucking taught me. My father didn't know shit all. He knew his father, and that's pretty much it. They're as blinded from the past as most people are. So I had to learn this on my own. Where do I come from? And then you discover all those energies. And those energies are looking for what? Respect. Listen, kid, you're here because of us. We faced these circumstances. These circumstances were so extreme and that pushed us, and we had to sacrifice our life to have access to those specific skills, these specific powers. And we developed that instead of this. And now you have, quote unquote, access to this, and you want to have access to this, you got to pay us. You want to really have access to that power. Before you're speaking about transcendence, meaning you get to the next level of the game. You can't talk about that. You don't have anything to transcend. Anyways, like I said, this is a very deep and profound subject. Your average person knows nothing of it. Some people have a sense of this. They use all kinds of different strategies to try to do this. All kinds of stuff, man, I've seen around. I've met shamans and they have their strategies with burning ancestor money and like, let's not get into that, right? But there's definitely a clear way to do this, which is, well, you need to navigate within in order to be able to do that. Like I told you before, in order to navigate within, you need some guidance. And then through this process, you're going to get to meet your ancestors. And they're going to tell you the story. Now, this is a language your average person doesn't understand. You think it's like Star Wars in the movies, like in the Black Panther. It's like, no, it's not exactly like that. It could be sometimes, but it's not exactly like that. And then you discover, okay, wow. You develop this form of compassion. You understand yourself because you are them. You're the resultant of them. You have a compassion for yourself. You understand why you have quote unquote weaknesses. You don't even see them as weaknesses anymore. You start to understand, oh, this is a survival mechanism. Because at the end of the day, the human is just interested in one thing, survival. And everybody survives and everybody has developed a way to survive. So if you're here, that means your ancestors succeeded. It doesn't matter if you were poor, if you're a junkie, if you're drunks. This is irrelevant. This is social judgment because society is filled with fucking imbeciles. Nah, the only thing that matters as far as nature is concerned is this motherfucker survived. Not everybody survives. Actually, most don't. So their process of survival worked. That means there's genius. That's what I'm trying to say. Everybody thinks that survival is we're rich, we're famous, we're glorified. I'm like, no. Do you think an animal gives a flying shit if it's king or queen, if it has nice fancy clothes or not? So when we're speaking about this, we talk about horizontal game. Horizontal game is the animal world. The only thing that matters is we survived. I am the result of genius. I being, I'm talking about the biological self and mind, of course. I am the result of genius. Now, the genius is not necessarily what you think, because everybody only thinks Einstein is a genius. I'm like, no, this nature's genius in its own right, man. Right? We've survived. So you have like a set of, when you go inside, you have like, oh, wow, there's skills. And there's also, dare I say, weaknesses, stuff that were, certain things that were overdeveloped, because that's the path, that's the avenue my ancestors took to build their strength, and other aspects that are weak as fuck. So now I could just continue to push this further and further and further, if you're lucky. Maybe probably you just closed off. Or I could try to compensate by finding a woman who's got more of that, which doesn't change your situation. Or I can learn to find a greater balance. Anyways, it gets complex. Let's not get lost. The point of what I'm trying to say is that your ancestors, if you're here today, you are the byproduct of the genius of their nature. Whatever that means. So that means you have access to genius if you can connect to it. But for the most part, it's locked. It's happening more or less unconsciously. And if you examine your own life, well, it seems to go towards a dead end, doesn't it? Which means it's the end, or the beginning of the new. One way, something is about to finish. It's the same. It was same for me. I got to the end. Either I die, that means it's the end of this lineage, or it's the birth of the new. That means I transcend, which is a whole other subject. I ain't not gonna get into it right now. But so it's a lot of pressure. If you're at that juncture in your journey, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. Especially if you don't have no brothers or sisters, it's a lot of pressure. It's like it's all on you. So you better do something. And you're carrying all of that with you. So obviously, if you're a sensitive cat, you don't want to deal with this shit. You just numb it off. I just don't want to deal with this. It's too much. How the hell am I going to do this? Ain't nobody teaching you, ain't nobody guiding you through the process. It's really complex. Life is complex. Let's be honest. Life is hard. It's not for everyone, as you can clearly see. Anyways, that's my answer about that.